2 years ago, the evil force of nature known as the Maker invaded a brand new Ultimate Universe, corrupting it from the inside out, and attempting to stamp out the birth of heroes wherever he possibly could. Now the Maker is finally free and ready to deliver an unholy wrath upon his enemies. Are the heroes of this new Ultimate Universe ready to weather the storm? Or are they truly in the endgame now? And because this is such a big event, such a special event, and such an important event, I figured, hey, you know what? Let's play with the format a little here. We got 2 brand new Ultimate stories that came out this week, so let's talk about them both, why don't we? So, without further ado, let's hop into the pages of Ultimate Endgame issue number 1 and Ultimates issue number 18 and find out what happens next together, shall we? So then, surprisingly enough, Endgame opens not in the present, but instead with a flashback. We go all the way back to when the Maker first started, imposing his will on this new Virgin universe. We see him murder the Eternals while also implying that he greatly respects their ability at playing God. And that should this brand new Ultimate Universe experiment fail, he'll simply just burn it all to the ground and start once more. Jeez, is that just him trying to be threatening, or is that them actually signposting something for later, I wonder? Now, in the present, we join up with the extended Spider-Man family in their Savage Land base of operation. Peter gets recruited by Iron Lad to assist in the final push, and man, isn't it crazy to think that Spider-Man is really only now officially joining the Ultimates? Ben and Jonah also talk about how Tony's big message to the world has really been catching on like wildfire. All over the place, people are standing up against the Maker and his cabal. Though interestingly enough, they also don't mention their own broadcast message from the last issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, which once again makes me think that the writers maybe got their signals crossed at one point. But don't worry, the paper isn't completely forgotten, as they actually have a little blurb in the back of this issue, which I thought was a nice touch, creatively speaking. Peter says his teary goodbyes to MJ and the rest of the family, vowing that he will return. Of course, his young son Richard desperately wants to suit up and join his father in the field. This is also where the subject of Peter's black suit, aka the Pico suit, ends up getting breached again for the first time in a long time. Oh yeah, the Pico suit. That feels like another storyline that Ultimate Spider-Man kind of had to drop in its own sprint to reach the finish line there. It was built by Howard Stark, and they still are saying that it's the key to something. Defeating the Maker, saving the universe, I don't know yet. I guess we're gonna have to keep reading to find out, won't we? Now, the battle against the Maker is happening all over the world. Thanks to Iron Lad's monkeying around with the Amortis engine, he can appear in multiple places at once to lead from the front. No doubt this will end up biting him in the ass later on, but for the time being, it's one of the good guys' only ace up their sleeves. While Captain America leads his own force in an adventure we'll cover later, Iron Lad, Spider-Man, America Chavez, and Doom decide to go directly to Latveria, waiting for the very moment that the shield drops on the Maker's city. The clock counts down, and eventually the big moment arrives. The shield on the city is dropped, but then a few seconds later, it ends up coming back online. It's as if a big door was opened and then suddenly shut in our hero's face again. Now, dome or no dome, nothing can actually help save our heroes from what happens next. Nick Fury and the Agents of Hand show up in a massive helicarrier armada that ends up bombarding absolutely everything in sight, including the Triscellion, which gets knocked out of the sky, in doing so completely cutting off our heroes and the rest of the Resistance movement from the Ultranet. Meaning at the absolute worst possible time, everyone and their mothers are flying blind right now. Not that that might have helped them that much, as Iron Lad and his team find themselves inside what was once Latveria. Time, you'll remember, moves differently here, and it seems in the interceding 1,000 years the landscape has mutated into some absolutely blighted, hellish cyberpunk realm where the very air itself is poison to anyone walking around. It's also here our heroes end up coming face to face with the Maker's eternal children, tube-grown life forms, designed to serve a single purpose, in this case, kill our heroes. They've also evolved so completely separately from the rest of the universe, they've developed their own strange language. Though, in a nice little touch, not only can they say Doom, they recognize the man as well. Things start looking really bad for our heroes very quickly as they end up getting totally overwhelmed by the children. It's right here, when it looks like everything is lost, the most unlikely of rescue ends up coming in the form of an anti-Maker resistance movement that has somehow managed to spring up under the very dome itself. The rank-and-file soldiers are called Deathlocks, and their leader turns out to be none other than Death's Head. I know, right? Friggin' Death's Head, this late in the game, we are introducing new characters, and one hell of a deep cut character too. Death's Head, maybe one of the most famous breakout characters from Marvel UK. A character who is famous for both being a Marvel character and also kind of being a Transformers character after a fact. If you put a gun to my, well, head, no pun intended, and said, hey, what new Marvel character do you think they're going to introduce here in the dying days of the Ultimate Universe? It sure wouldn't have been him, but I'm super excited to see him take part in the proceedings. Death's Head, who is still very much a bounty hunter in this universe, decides to take our heroes to his benefactor, the leader of the anti-Maker resistance, a man named Amortis. And chances are, if you're like me, you've probably already jumped to the correct conclusion as to who Amortis' real identity is. Yes, that's right, everyone. It's Howard Stark, Tony's father, alive, but not particularly well. It seems that his own wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey shenanigans have completely melted his brain. He doesn't remember his son, and he doesn't know when or where he is right now. If nothing else, though, he is able to tell the good guys where they can find the Maker. You see, the Maker isn't actually in the city anymore, and that's because after 1,000 years of evolution, the Maker is the very city they're standing on. Well, that certainly explains why he didn't want to come out and play. Now that's where Endgame comes to a close and where we will begin Ultimates issue number 19. This issue begins with the Triscellion once again falling out of the sky before we eventually hook back up with Captain America and his team, who have been embroiled in a month-long battle against Captain Britain and his assembled forces of enslaved British mythic figures. As we learn, Captain America has actually already killed King Arthur. Don't worry, they just returned to Avalon where they're all eventually reborn. In fact, it seems that Captain Britain is refusing to leave Avalon. A, because he's a big old coward, but also because B, the Maker's cabal are just as scared of the Maker and his wrath as anyone else. But if you can actually believe it, what Ultimates 19 really is a long overdue origin story for Janet Van Dyne the Wasp. And I say overdue because when we break it down, she's kind of maybe the most important piece of Dennis Camp's brand new Ultimate series as a whole. She's the mole. She's the secret traitor within the group. She did all of it to protect her husband Hank. But the hows and whys of it really get fleshed out in this issue, and I gotta say, they take it in a direction that I was most definitely not expecting. In this issue, we learned that Janice's upbringing wasn't exactly a happy one. She saw a loveless marriage crush her mother's spirit. She vowed that she wouldn't have anyone extinguish her light in the same way. Though her priorities would change when she was introduced to a young new upstart scientist at her father's company, a young man by the name of Hank Pym. Hank was different than basically everyone else Janet ever knew. Yes, he was incredibly smart, but he never talked down to her. He was just as invested in her dreams of becoming a fashion designer as he was in all the groundbreaking science he was working on. Of course, we know that the Maker sought to punish Hank Pym, engineering an accident that would cause him to lose much of his own mental faculties. Janet was crushed when she learned that Hank would basically have to relearn everything all over again, and her father, cruel, cold-hearted man that he was, decided to actually fire Hank then and there. For a split second, even she thought of abandoning him too, but you know why she didn't? Despite everything they've been through right here on the darkest day of his life, when Hank Pym has seemingly lost everything, when he is moments away from losing the love of his life, what does he do? He does the impossible. He does what no one else in Janet's life up until that point has done, and that is he asks her, how is she feeling? How is she doing? And you know what? They fall in love all over again in that moment. Oh man, seriously, this book's amazing ability to mine the human spirit and end up being so much sweeter than you think it actually could ever possibly be always blows me away. Janet and Hank would end up getting married against her parents' wishes, even though in doing so it meant that Janet would be cut off from their considerable fortune. Still though, she stood by her man through thick and thin. Eventually they would even end up becoming business partners, opening a pest control business. It wasn't the big life she thought she would have, but she was happy, at least she thought so, until one night a mysterious shadowy individual, who we are expected to believe is Nick Fury, came to her with an offer. Be special, be something that matters, others, be the big person you were always meant to be. Now, in the present, the battle against the Agent of Hand's forces ends up really turning against our heroes. Poor Ant-Man ends up getting blasted with a giant energy beam. And after witnessing so much death and destruction up close and personal, the Wasp is starting to have second guesses about her choice to betray the team, even if it meant saving the life of the man she loved the most. Oh, but hold on to your seat, everyone, because the real revelations are still yet to come. Remember, I said Janet took a job with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Well, what did they want from her? Well, they wanted her to train in combat, in flight, in the sort of skills that would make her the perfect Wasp. But how did they know that she would eventually end up getting the Wasp's origin box and joining Iron Lad's Ultimates initiative before it even started? Well, I promise you the answers are gonna blow your mind. They certainly did for me. Janet and Hank end up getting taken hostage by Nick Fury. Fury takes this opportunity to villainously twist the knife in, revealing to Ant-Man that Wasp has always actually been a double agent working for the bad guys this whole time, a thought that he literally cannot fathom without irritating his old brain injury. It seems that no matter what happens here, Ant-Man and Wasp are either going to die by the hands of Fury or be taken hostage. That is, of course, until Janet's real mystery benefactor ends up swooping on in to save the day, quite literally removing Nick Fury's computer brain from his head, before revealing herself to be a brand new female version of the Vision. Holy crap. I mean, I guess the Vision is one of the only mainline Avengers we've been missing, so yeah, it only makes sense to see them show up, even if they are doing so here so late in the game. This is indeed a reveal that kinda changes everything, doesn't it? And yeah, there you have it, everybody. Ultimate Endgame issue number 1 and Ultimates issue number 19. I know going into this big final stretch of this brand new Ultimate Universe, I was a little bit worried. Spider-Man had kind of left, well, not a bad taste in my mouth, but definitely an apprehensive taste in my mouth. It really felt like, man, they're not going to have enough time to finish this in a way that's going to be satisfying. How could they possibly wrap up all these different storylines, all of these different character arcs? How can they make it all work? And if I was worried, I'm happy to say these 2 new issues probably actually restored my faith. Now again, I could still be totally wrong. They could still totally end up bungling the whole thing, but as it stands right now, I don't think they will. Personally, I like what they've done with the Maker as a threat. So much of this brand new Ultimate Universe has been giving our heroes systemic problems that they can't simply just punch away. So having the Maker go from an actual physical manifestation of evil to a full-on land himself that needs to actively be overcome, there's certainly a lot there to chew on, narratively speaking. Then you have the late game edition of The Vision, another thing that I really did not expect, and I'm happy to say that the book left me pleasantly surprised. More than anything, what sold me on this finale so far is how they really didn't forget about the characters. Yes, everything is ending, the line, the world, but they still took time out of their busy schedule to make sure that Janet's arc felt more complete, that Tony got a little one-on-one time with his father, the return of all the Amortis stuff, and yeah, you know what, if I wasn't sold, I think they sold me on this one. Overall, I would give this one a much-deserved 8.5 out of 10, and I hope you all enjoyed it too.